This video isn't like a cry for help or some sympathy bait bullshit. Nothing like that. I just wanted to share like my experiences on loneliness and stuff like that in general. And one of the things that I have to say first is being alone and being lonely isn't the same. That's very important to distinguish first of all, because for example, you can be completely alone but not feel lonely, same as you can be with people but feel lonely. So those two things are very important to distinguish at first. For example, I have never been the type of guy. I've always been like the shy guy, the introvert. Just I've always liked having like less friends that I'm much more close with, and having multiple friends that I'm like less close with individually. So I think like the peak of my social life was like in elementary school, in like 8th grade and stuff, before the COVID happened. But then in like high school, for example, my class was like full of girls, and there were only like 5 of us that were boys. And in high school, I was always like friends. I was always around my best friend at the time. But then in like I remember there was this last trip in like the last year of high school. We went to like Prague and stuff, like 2 whole classes, even from different schools, so it would be like cheaper. And I remember having like a fight with like my closest friend, kind of. Like we didn't really talk about it. It just kind of happened. Like he wanted to do like one thing, and I just didn't really like want to follow him around. For example, we had free time in between like sightseeing and with the tour guides, and I was always with my best friend, but like he wanted to constantly just do one thing and expected for me to follow him, and like I just kind of got sick and tired of that and just wanted to go my own way. So I remember like when we were in Vienna for like a few hours, like we had some like alone time and we could just split into groups. I was like completely alone in this like big city. I was just like walking around and just I was just looking at the nature. I remember like sitting down at the park and just like chilling. For like for most of my high school, he was like my only friend. And I remember he also like wouldn't come to school like literally like once a week, and those days would feel like the worst because everybody was already in their own groups. Everybody kind of like already knew each other from the start, and because I wasn't like really social at the start and wasn't really trying to socialize and become like close to the other people in my class, I just ended up being with my best friend throughout the high school. But like when he wasn't there, like those were like the loneliest fucking days of my life. And outside of high school, we didn't really do anything. Like we never really hung out or done stuff like that. Like I remember like there was this big break, you know, when everybody would take lunch. That was like on like the half day mark of the school. The school would like last for like what 5-6 hours, and at like the halftime, everybody would get like lunch, go eat and stuff like that. And like literally like once a week, I would like spend like 20 minutes just completely being alone while everybody was like with someone. And that just was on some days like that shit was like really fucking hard, I'm gonna be honest. Especially like sitting also the rest of the day, the entire day, like in school, in class, like alone in the table without someone like there being sit next to me like everybody else. We also got close the year before. So this was like summer of 3rd grade of high school, and that's when we went to Prague. And that third year, we also kind of got close to another guy from our class. And I remember like that whole year, he was more like, I felt a lot like the third wheel. Like imagine like you spent 2 whole years like basically having like only one friend that you were. I mean, I was very close with him in high school, and he was a really good guy, but and we just like we joked around and we had like a great friendship, and then but it wasn't always perfect. And I think in that third year I kind of like realized that like as soon as he kind of got closer to that third guy from my class, I always just felt like a third wheel. Like whenever there were three of us in the class, he would always like sit next to him, like 90% of the time. I feel like, and that kind of like fucked me up a little. And then in like fourth year, that third guy actually kind of stopped hanging out with us as much, and I think that hit my friend a little bit, like the one I was the most closest with throughout the high school. And I thought that was kind of like funny because I felt the exact same thing like in third year. The funny thing is like that guy was basically my only friend throughout high school, and then when I went to college, it's like the exact same thing happened at the beginning. Instead of like me like socializing and meeting other people in class, like I always have the instinct, like after COVID happened, I've always had the instinct to like to always go in the opposite direction of everybody else. Like if everybody would like want to have a party and stuff, like I did not want to be there. Like I just got so used to it. I think in the COVID days I got so used to being alone that like I don't know, I completely like lost touch with like my friends that we were very good in elementary school. And then in the beginning of high school, I made the same mistake I made at the beginning of college. I don't really know why, but like I have this instinct of like whenever I'm around in like a big group of people, my first instinct is to like just leave and just go be alone. And I feel like nowadays a lot of people can kind of relate more than like, for example, like 100 years ago or more than that. I think there's a lot of lonely people nowadays. That's why I kind of wanted to share my story. Like, for example, now like the third guy from the third grade in high school, like that's basically right now my only friend. Even though I'm like right now I barely talk to anyone except him, but like we rarely talk now. But what I want to do like more in the future, especially because of my channel and stuff, I think it's time for me to kind of like make my social life better, you could say. So yeah, I think in the future I definitely want to have like more definitely want to be more social than I used to be. The thing is, I kind of tried doing that before like multiple times, but like I don't know, I think I just kind of like gave up and like lost motivation. And the funny thing is, the more I tried to to be more kind of like social and go out, the more like lonely I would feel. But I think that's maybe kind of it's kind of like a mid phase before you actually become closer with multiple people and you actually have some form some actual honest connections. Another thing I want to say, like I just spent so much time alone throughout my life, and like I've very gotten like used to it, just being alone, to the point where like right now I don't really feel like lonely at all. But to be honest, that's also, I think part of that is also because I think I watch streams and like YouTube videos and stuff, and that's kind of parasocial, and I think that's kind of like how I kind of replace my social life. So instead of having like real friends, real connections, I like watch streams. I think there's a lot of people out there, especially the same people that also like watch streams. There's definitely like a lot of them in that kind of like communities that are just very lonely, and they have just kind of replaced having like real friends in real life with watching streamers like live their own life. But one thing I have to say is like, sure, I've spent a lot of time alone, but I think I also gained a lot from that. For example, I think right now, like, I don't feel the urge anymore to like to be friends with someone just to be friends with, like, and I think that kind of gives me the power of like choosing my friends much more than like maybe like other people, I could say, because I think other people or like teenagers and stuff, they quite often like choose the first person they see just so they wouldn't feel as lonely as anymore. But that kind of has given me the power to like choose really like whoever I want to be friends with, and not feel like oh no, I'm gonna be lonely if I and not that I'm gonna feel like, oh no, I have to do this now, otherwise I'm gonna be lonely for the rest of my life or whatever, like, fucking fly. Another thing is also, I think I'm much more in touch with my own emotions. I think, for example, like there will be a lot of days like in the past, like since the half of third grade of high school, like a lot of days I would just be up until 3 a.m., 2 a.m., even 4 a.m., and sometimes even 5. But like before I would go to sleep at like midnight or 1, or actually have a good sleep schedule, and then after like third grade of high school, I remember that first semester, like there was that, I think that was definitely the hardest semester of my life, and I was studying like so much. I was spending so many hours like either in school or studying, and I think I just completely like lost my touch for school then after that first semester. I remember being very burnt out and really wanting to quit high school, and after that I just kind of started hating it even more. Yeah, that was like the first period of my life where I started like going to bed at like consistently at like 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. even though I had to like wake up at like 6:30 on days when we had school in the morning. And I think I've always been kind of doing that thing where I always like talking to myself, and I've always like, don't get me wrong, always liked spending time with myself like a lot. Like, I think, for example, like other people who are maybe like more extroverted, like they don't really like being with their own thoughts and like talking to themselves. I think they're kind of like scared of their own thoughts. And but for example, me, I think I'm much more in touch because I've spent so much time being alone with my thoughts. I'm much more in touch with my like feelings, and I think I'm able to control my feelings a lot better than other people. And the reason why I always liked like talking to myself, especially like at night before going to bed for like or like an hour 30 in like full dark, is because I would get a lot of ideas, and I could like talk about my day, and like, I don't know, I think I just had a lot of like creativity and ideas that I gained from just talking to myself and being alone. And I was able to kind of like, you could say, dissect my life and really like understand myself a lot better than, I guess you could say, that the average person. So yeah, even though like being alone and being lonely doesn't feel good sometimes, you do gain something out of it. And I think that's kind of how it is with most things in life. Like, I think there's always like something good in something bad, and there's always something bad in something good. There's rarely ever like that's something that's truly good. I don't think that exists really. Truly good or truly evil. If you've kind of thought about everything, you could see that there's always two sides of the same coin. And that's another thing that I kind of also gained from being with myself. Is that I always liked kind of like finding out the truth, and always been like try to be the most objective I can and the least biased I can be. I've always like when I would approach different like topics and arguments, I would always look from both sides, like very like detailed and stuff. And I think that developed my critical thinking, like more, I guess you could say, of people that don't really do those kind of things, that don't really like talk to themselves. And yeah, so I would definitely consider myself kind of like my own philosopher. I remember also having this talk with one of my friends before, and he would also kind of like agree that he's also kind of like his own philosopher. You hear it all the time, but it is true that nowadays it's so easy to be distracted in this world. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Like, not everything is black and white. Like most things, I'd say even like everything is very very gray. It's gray. So yeah, even though I definitely lost a lot from spending a lot of time being alone, I also gained a lot, I would say. I think throughout elementary school, like I was never lonely. Like in school, I was very close to my friends. I would go to sports training. Like I was also very like social there, and even like when there would be like summer breaks and stuff, I would always like play football with my friends, and I would never feel lonely. But high school, like and COVID changed things a lot. I always liked just being alone, and I've always liked the nature, and just I think it just gives you the kind of freedom that you can't really get if you're with someone else. I think like if you're alone, you can truly be free and free of like judgment, and you can really like, let's say if you're walking outside, you can really go like anywhere you want. You don't need to go on like a certain path. You can really go like anywhere. And that's one thing I always liked about spending time alone, that you just you don't really get the type of freedom that you would get with if you were with someone. It's like a different type of freedom, I would say. And outside of school, I would always like play games and or like watch streams. Okay, I think I'll just go now. This is my first type of video that's like this. I definitely want to make more videos like this in the future. So if you enjoy this type of content and want to see more in the future, consider subscribing. And yeah, that's it. I definitely want to share some more of my like experiences and opinions on certain topics that are like, I guess you could say, deeper, like something more like deeper about life and not just pure entertainment.